Okay, let's get into this. We're talking about an incredible writing system that really shaped an entire civilization for over 3,000 years.
We are ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics.
And it's so much more than just the beautiful art you see on tomb walls,
Yeah.
right? This was, I mean, it was an administrative tool, a religious text, an archive, everything rolled into one.
It's astounding, isn't it? When you start digging into the details, you realize that this wasn't just communication, it was seen as a sacred act.
Sacred how?
Well, the Egyptians themselves believed writing was a divine creation. They actually called the symbols the words of the gods.
The words of the gods.
Yeah, and they credited the god of wisdom, Thoth, with inventing the whole system.
Wow. So if language itself is a gift from a god, that immediately elevates the status of anyone who could actually master it.
Oh, completely. Most people were illiterate, which just shows you how exclusive and powerful this skill really was.
Okay, so if writing is this sacred gift, how complicated was it to, open that gift? Because visually it just looks like picture writing.
And that's the core misunderstanding most people have. It looks like simple pictures, but it operates on multiple levels at the same time,
So think of it less like an alphabet.
and more like a complex code.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first challenge for anyone learning was just the sheer volume. You had to memorize over 700 different signs to be fluent.
700 signs. That's overwhelming compared to the 26 letters we use. That alone explains why scribes were such an elite class. So let's break down those 700 signs. They weren't all used in the same way, were they?
Exactly. The sophistication comes from the fact that it's a hybrid system. It combines 3 different types of symbols.
Okay, so what's the first type? The most basic one.
First, you have the simplest ones, which are called logograms.
Logograms.
And these are symbols that represent the actual object they show. So a drawing of a sun might just mean the word sun or the idea of day.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like seeing a picture of a house on a map and knowing it means house. But if that was the whole system, you'd need millions of symbols for every single word. How do you write something abstract, like love or truth?
And that's where the second type comes in, which is the most crucial part, the phonograms.
Phonogram, so sounds.
Exactly. These signs don't represent the object they look like, they represent a specific sound. This is what let them write abstract concepts or verbs. You can think of it like a rebus puzzle.
Oh, I love that analogy, a rebus puzzle. So, if they wanted to write the sound R, they might use a symbol for a mouth because the Egyptian word for mouth started with that sound.
Precisely. They're using the picture of an object to spell out a sound, just like we might draw an I and a can to spell I can.
Got it.
They mostly used consonant sounds, by the way. Vowels are often left out, which made reading even more dependent on context.
Okay, so that could get confusing.
It could. And because lots of words can sound similar, they needed a way to clarify the meaning. And that brings us to the third type of sign, which is probably the most unique part of the whole system.
The determinative.
The determinative. Yes, the clue symbol.
So how does that work? How did it clear up the confusion?
So a determinative is a symbol you place at the end of a word. You don't speak it, it doesn't have a sound. Its only job is to give context to the word that came before it.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Imagine you wrote the sound sequence per. That sound could mean to go out, or it could mean a house.
Two completely different things. As a reader, I'd be stuck.
Right. So if the scribes wrote per and then put a little picture of walking legs after it, you'd know the word is to go out. But if they wrote per and then followed it with a tiny picture of a house, you'd know it means a house. It just clarifies the category of the word. Is it a verb of motion, a building, a god? It was a genius system.
That really does bring the sophistication into focus. It's not just pictures. It's this complex, multi-layered system that required, immense training.
And even the physical act of reading it was flexible, which is fascinating. We're stuck with left to right.
But they could play with it.
They really could. You could read it left to right, or right to left, or even top to bottom.
So how did you know where to start?
The rule is actually pretty straightforward. You just look at the faces of the animals or the people in the script.
They're like an arrow telling you which way to go.
Exactly. If the figures are facing to the right, you start reading from the right and move toward them. If they face left, you start on the left. It's a built-in guide.
That complexity just naturally leads us to the people who mastered the system. The scribes. I mean, if the script was that hard, these people weren't just administrators. They were probably the most important non-royals in the whole society.
Without a doubt. Being a scribe was a position of immense status and respect. In a society where most people were farmers or laborers, the person who could read and write had direct access to power. They kept the whole empire running.
It sounds like a guaranteed ticket to the elite class. But this wasn't a universal education system, was it?
Oh, far from it. This was a really exclusive opportunity. It was for boys, usually from wealthy families, the sons of officials, priests, other scribes. And they started their training very, very young.
Oh, young.
Around 5 years old. And this wasn't a quick course. This was a decade or more of intensive study.
Wow. Imagine spending years just drawing 700 symbols perfectly, day in and day out.
Yeah.
What did that training even look like? They weren't practicing on expensive papyrus, were they?
Oh, no. It was a rigorous, often harsh apprenticeship. They spent countless hours just perfecting the signs, usually practicing on cheap materials like smooth stones or broken pieces of pottery.
Ostraca.
Ostraca, right. They would just copy texts over and over again. Discipline was key. Teachers were known to use corporal punishment. It was a tough life, but the payoff was enormous.
And that reward wasn't just respect. It was job security and incredible perks that completely separated them from the working class.
Absolutely. The government, the temples, the royal court, they all needed scribes constantly. Their duties were vast. Managing tax records, writing down the pharaoh's decrees, managing all kinds of documents. They were basically the human hard drive of ancient Egypt.
And maybe the greatest perk, which is so relatable when you think about how hard life was back then, is the physical exemption.
That was the key selling point. They were too valuable for manual labor.
So while farmers were sweating in the fields or other people were doing back-breaking labor-building pyramids,
The scribes were exempt. They wore fine linen and sat in offices. Their knowledge was literally irreplaceable. They were the intellectual backbone of the state.
and ultimately, they're the reason we know anything about this civilization. They're the ones who made sure the memory and history of their society lasted for thousands of years.
That's their legacy. But thinking about their daily work, we see the massive stone inscriptions, but the day-to-day stuff must have required something faster than a chisel.
Right, you're not going to carve a tax receipt into the side of a temple. They had a kind of material hierarchy, didn't they?
They did. For the permanent records, the grand religious texts meant for eternity. Those were carved deep into the stone walls of tombs and temples, designed to last forever.
But for everything else.
Yeah.
For letters, tax rolls.
For all of that, they turned to papyrus. This was the ancient world's most sophisticated kind of paper. It was made from the papyrus plant that grew everywhere in the marshes along the Nile.
So how do they do that? How do you turn a plant stalk into a sheet of paper?
The process was really clever. They'd harvest the stalks, peel off the outside, and cut the spongy inner core into long, thin strips.
Okay.
These strips were laid side by side, slightly overlapping, and then a second layer was laid across the first perpendicular to it.
Like a crosshatch pattern.
Exactly. Then they were pounded flat with a mallet, and the plant's own sap acted as a natural glue, binding the layers. Once it was dried and polished, you had a strong, flexible, lightweight writing surface.
And the scribe's toolkit for writing on that papyrus was surprisingly simple, considering how complex the script was.
Incredibly practical. The essential tool was a wooden palette, which usually had 2 little holes in it for ink cakes.
One for black ink and one for red.
Right. One for black, which was the standard color for the main text.
And what was the red ink for?
Black ink was made from soot or charcoal mixed with water and a bit of glue. Red ink, made from ground ochre, was saved for highlighting important stuff titles, headings, dates, the start of a new section. It's basically what a highlighter does for you today.
And their pens.
They weren't really pens, they were brushes made from reeds, which they'd chew on one end to soften the fibers into a point.
Okay, so if a scribe is recording a list of supplies on papyrus, they can't afford to spend 10 minutes drawing a perfect, elaborate falcon.
No way! That need for speed drove an evolution in how the script was actually written.
And this is where we get the different styles of writing.
Exactly. That's the transition from the formal script to the administrative scripts. The formal hieroglyphics were detailed and beautiful, but way too time-consuming for office work. So, scribes developed hieratic.
Tell us about hieratic. How was it different?
Hieratic was basically a simplified cursive version of hieroglyphics. Think of the difference between block printing every letter in a text message versus quickly signing your name.
So the shapes were connected and less detailed.
Much less detailed and written much faster. It was the standard script for official documents on papyrus for centuries.
But that wasn't even the final stage of simplification.
No, necessity drove even more change. Over time, hieratic evolved into an even simpler, quicker script called demotic.
Demotic.
Yeah, demotic was for everyday business, legal documents, personal letters. By the time of the Greek and Roman periods, it was the closest thing they had to shorthand.
So the choice of script always depended on the context. Is this for eternity, or is it for today's business?
Precise.
And we have to remember, these scribes weren't just expert linguists. They were also the mathematicians of the ancient world. Writing and numbers were completely integrated into managing the empire.
Absolutely. Their mathematical system was incredibly advanced for the time, and it was a decimal system based on 10, just like the one we use.
Did they have different symbols for every number, like 1 through 9?
They did, but they also had special symbols for the powers of 10. So, for example, the number 1,000 was represented by a lotus flower.
A lotus flower for 1,000, that's beautiful.
10,000 was a finger pointing to the sky. 100,000 was a tadpole. They just repeated these symbols to build up whatever number they needed.
And the practical application for all this math.
Oh, it was crucial for this state. One of the most important jobs was managing the land after the Nile flooded every year. The floodwaters would wipe out all the boundary markers.
So the scribes had to go out and resurvey the fields.
Using geometry and precise measurements, yes, so they could accurately calculate how much tax each farmer owed.
And of course, the pyramids. You couldn't build those without precise calculations of length, weight, volume.
Exactly. And for that, they needed standardized measurements. Their main unit was the cubit.
The cubit, right.
Which was based on the length of a person's forearm from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger, about 20 inches long. They kept standard cubit rods in temples to make sure everyone was consistent.
Speaking of royal administration, we have to talk about the cartouche. That's the feature that immediately sets the royal names apart.
The cartouche is such a beautiful and meaningful detail. It's that oval shape you always see surrounding the name of a king or queen.
It looks like a rope.
It symbolizes a protective rope tied in a knot, encircling and protecting the royal name.
So it wasn't just decoration. It was a physical symbol of protection for the pharaoh's identity.
That's right. A clear visual marker that set the ruler's name apart from everyone else. And that special distinction would later become the single most important clue we had to unlock the entire language.
Which brings us to, well, arguably, the single greatest breakthrough in history, the discovery of the Rosetta Stone. Because for a very long time, the modern world couldn't read these texts. All of that history was right there on the walls, but it was completely silent.
And that silence lasted for centuries. It trapped thousands of years of history. It was like having a library full of books written in a language no one could decode.
Until 1799.
Until the summer of 1799. French soldiers were building a fort near a town called Rosetta, and they uncovered this large black slab of stone.
And this wasn't some small artifact.
Not at all. It's a heavy piece of dark stone called granodiorite. It weighs almost 1,700 pounds. And what made it so important was that it had the same decree carved on it in 3 different scripts.
And why was that combination the key to everything?
Because one version was in hieroglyphics, the second was in that everyday Egyptian script, demotic, and the third was written in ancient Greek.
A language that scholars could still read.
Critically, yes. They could still read ancient Greek. So suddenly, they had the exact same message translated into a known language, sitting right next to the mysterious Egyptian signs.
That must have kicked off a massive international race to be the person who finally cracked the code.
It did. And that honor belongs to a French scholar, Jean-François Champollion. He was a brilliant linguist who spent over a decade studying the stone.
And what was his big insight? The thing that finally made it click?
The crucial realization came when he studied the names inside those cartouches we mentioned.
The royal names?
The royal names. He knew from the Greek text that one of the cartouches contained the name Ptolemy. So he started comparing the Greek letters of Ptolemy to the hieroglyphic symbols inside that specific cartouche.
So he could match specific symbols to specific sounds. The royal names became a phonetic cheat sheet.
Exactly. He used that key to match other royal names, like Cleopatra, and proved his system worked. He realized the script wasn't just sounds, and it wasn't just pictures. It was a fluid combination of both. In 1822, he announced his breakthrough. He could finally read the names of the pharaohs.
And that announcement just transformed history overnight. Suddenly, that entire library of Egyptian civilization was unlocked.
It was a true rebirth for history. The ability to read those signs lets us learn about everything from their surgery and farming to their family life and religious beliefs. It's a direct bridge to people who lived thousands of years ago.
And that story isn't over. The fact that new technology is helping experts today read damaged scrolls without even unrolling them shows that the words of the gods are still giving up their secrets.
This writing system remains one of humanity's greatest achievements in communication. It literally gave them immortality through ink and stone.
Good luck with your studies.